Chairman Royce, Ranking Member Engel, distinguished members of the committee, Representative Donovan, thank you for the opportunity to testify again regarding the administration's Guantanamo detainee transfer process. Secretary Carter has approved the transfer of 43 detainees, 28 of whom have been transferred this year. Secretary Hagel approved the transfer of 44 detainees. Secretary Panetta, 7, and Secretary Gates, 65. During this administration, 159 detainees have been transferred. Mr. Chairman, we understand the importance of this issue to you and this committee, and we appreciate the attention you have given to it. As I stated in March at the outset, I'd like to reiterate one continuing fundamental point regarding this detention facility. The President and his National Security Committee have determined that closing this detention facility is a national security imperative. Imperative is a strong term. The President and his leadership of the National Security Team believe that the continued operation of the detention facility weakens our national security. Closing Guantanamo is about protecting the country, not weakening it. As you know, the importance in closing this detention facility is echoed by former President George W. Bush and a long list of former Secretaries of State, Secretaries of Defense, Joint Staff Chairmen, and other former military leaders. As Representative Engel noted, a letter was provided to the committee by former flag officers, including a former Commandant of the Marine Corps. Transfers from Gitmo are in the national security interest of the United States and are conducted in a safe and responsible manner. On March 23, 2016, I testified before this committee. During that hearing, as the chairman noted, I was asked whether the Department of Defense had ever knowingly transferred a detainee to a country that did not exhibit an ability to substantially mitigate the risk or control the individual. In response to that question, I stated the Department of Defense had not conducted such a transfer. I stand by my response. We've addressed your concerns, Mr. Chairman, in the letter that we sent to you this week, and I again apologize for the late response, but I want to briefly highlight several points. Here's our statutory framework. The 2016 NDA requires that at least 30 days prior to any transfer, and in addition to other requirements, the Secretary of Defense certify to Congress that the receiving country has taken or agreed to take steps to substantially mitigate any risk the individual could attempt to re-engage or otherwise threaten the United States. We have met that statutory requirement with each of our transfers. Prior to the transfer of any detainee to a foreign country, the United States government receives security assurances from the receiving country regarding the actions that the receiving country has taken or agrees to take to substantially mitigate the risk. After the assurances are negotiated, the Secretary of Defense and his senior staff engage in a robust review process that considers many factors, including all of the intelligence that the government has regarding the threat posed by the individual detainee and the security assurances. Importantly, updated intelligence, medical, and compliance information is provided to each country regarding the detainees under consideration for the transfer. Many countries also take the opportunity to travel to Gitmo to interview transfer candidates. After full consideration of all this information, including a full and updated assessment from the intelligence community, the Secretary makes the determination that I told you about earlier. As Secretary Carter has testified and Secretary Hagel testified, they take this responsibility very seriously. Secretary Carter has said he will not transfer a detainee that he does not believe is in the security interest of the United States to do so. These transfers have not been conducted in a vacuum, sir. Each transfer is formally notified to Congress, and we regularly brief members and staff on transfers. With the notice of each transfer, we offer to brief congressional leadership and members and staff of all the national security committees. I appreciate the opportunity we have had to regularly brief you and your staff regarding these transfers. Briefly, I think it's important to put these recent transfer decisions in a foreign policy context for this committee. Many countries in the international community want to close Gitmo and have stepped up to help us. Specifically, over 30 countries since 2009 have accepted for resettlement Guantanamo detainees that are not nationals of their country. Additionally, there is sustained support for our closure efforts from civil society organizations, both domestic and abroad, including the Organization for American States. Even the Vatican has expressed the support for our closure efforts. In summary, each transfer is only approved after careful scrutiny by the intensive interagency review process and the negotiation of the security assurances sufficient to substantially mitigate any threat. Finally, I'd like to take a moment to again recognize the military service members who conduct detention operations at Guantanamo. These men and women continue to have our deepest appreciation for their service and the professionalism they display each and every day on behalf of our nation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. The last time you appeared before this committee, we asked specific questions about the transfer of detainees to countries ill-equipped to handle them. Specifically, we asked whether the Department of Defense ever transferred a detainee to a country that it knew was incapable of maintaining control of that individual and keeping him from returning to the battlefield. Mr. Lewis responded no. Mr. Walski stated that he was not aware of such an instance. Upon further review of your own intelligence assessments, those answers appear to be false. In fact, it appears that the administration has released dangerous terrorists to ill-equipped countries on numerous occasions. On May 16, I wrote to your departments asking you to correct the record. You did not. The committee asked the administration to halt all transfers until you explained your testimony. You did not. In fact, you completely ignored the letter until we called this hearing. And that is why we are here today. And I'm going to ask you several simple questions, and I'd appreciate a simple yes or no answer. Mr. Lewis, Mr. Walski, in your roles, do you have access to intelligence assessments of detainees and transfer countries?
Yes.
Do you review those intelligence assessments prior to the transfer of detainees to the custody of foreign governments?
Yes, sir.
We review the intelligence assessments that are material to the issue before us, which is whether to transfer a detainee to a specific country under certain circumstances in order to be able to meet the statutory standard.
Right. And in my May 16th letter, I referenced 3 intelligence reports submitted to Congress pursuant to Section 1023 of the National Defense Authorization Act. Those reports are dated May 31st of 2013, July 15th of 2014, August 6th of 2015. Are you familiar with the content of those reports?
Yes.
Yes.
Are you aware that those reports contains assessments of each country to which the Defense Department has transferred detainees?
Yes.
Yes.
And are you aware that those assessments indicate that some countries lack the ability to control those terrorists?
We cannot, by law, discuss classified Defense Intelligence Agency assessments in this session, Mr. Chairman. We're happy to do that in closed session. What I would point out to the committee is that in connection with each transfer, we do rely on intelligence reporting that is broader than just DIA reporting, and as I said, is tailored specifically to the issue of a transfer to a certain country at a particular point in time, and is geared toward a determination or an analysis of whether the relevant statutory standard for transfers can be met.
Mr. Chairman, the reports you refer to are one of many reports we look at. We look at all source information from the intelligence community. And as the envoy has stated, the Secretary makes his determination looking at all the evidence that's available, the updated evidence, and in particular, he makes his assessment after we overlay the security assurances to that country. So if the intelligence tells us that there may be a gap in capabilities, that's what we negotiate the assurances for. So again, we look at those records, Mr. Chairman, but we look at a much broader array of records.
I'm going to explain to you, Mr. Lewis, that is not what you said here in March, all right? And in light of your familiarity with the intelligence intelligence reports and what is in those reports, I'm just going to ask you again, has the administration ever transferred a detainee to a country it knew was incapable of monitoring that individual, preventing him from traveling outside the country or otherwise keeping him from returning to the battlefield?
Sir, since I've worked for Secretary Hagel and Secretary Carter, every transfer has met the statutory requirement. And it's my understanding that the administration, prior to my coming, transferred pursuant to the process that Envoy Woloski indicated, and there are no transfers that I'm aware of that did not meet the statutory requirement.
I don't think you can just wish away intelligence reports that raise grave concerns, reports that you chose to deny when asked about them in our last hearing. But if you're now saying that the intelligence reports are, I assume the implication here, incomplete, then I have to say, from what we can tell, the president has made a political decision to close Guantanamo no matter what the cost to national security, based upon our experience, based upon our discussions which go on for some considerable time now in terms of the warnings from us on this committee about the 5 individuals who were transferred to Uruguay and their subsequent conduct, and now the fact that one of them has been released. That can be the only reason why these intelligence assessments are being pushed aside, in my judgment. And it appears that the assurances that you got from Uruguay didn't account for anything. This fellow, Jihad, Diab, walked right out of Uruguay. We have no idea where he is. And if that country is telling you that they won't prevent their travel, which is what I pointed out to you, then we better listen. If they're not going to prevent their travel, then it's not a surprise what subsequently has occurred. So, Mr. Woloski, you've briefed this committee several times about Uruguay. You've told us repeatedly that the government of Uruguay was capable of handling these terrorists. In fact, you testified on March 23rd that we are confident, to your question, that the government of Uruguay is taking appropriate steps to substantially mitigate the risk associated with each of the 6 detainees that have been transferred to its custody. That turned out to be wrong, as I pointed out. Jihad Diab has now escaped. Now, the other point I would make to you, and this also goes to some of the conversations he's had, is that I'm aware this was the 3rd time he left Uruguay. And nobody knows where he is. The media is reporting that he could be on his way to Syria or Yemen. And I would just like to ask, why did you provide false assurances to Congress? Why did you mislead us about Uruguay's capabilities? Because I made it very clear to you, our concerns about Uruguay's capabilities, they were pretty upfront.
Mr. Chairman, I strongly disagree with any suggestion that I misled this committee. In fact, I stand by my testimony from March in which I affirmed that Uruguay had committed to and is in fact taking steps to substantially mitigate the risk of the 6 detainees that were transferred to its custody in December 2014. While we would have preferred that Mr. Diab remained in Uruguay, if in fact he is not in Uruguay currently, until the expiration of the 2-year resettlement program that was the subject of the agreement reached with Uruguay and reached with him, frankly. The fact is that the standard is not elimination of risk, it is mitigation of risk. And there is we never represented to this committee